In a world that's changing faster than ever, how do you actually build generational wealth? It's a huge question for everyone, right? But it's especially urgent for the U.S. Hispanic community. So today, we're diving into a roadmap for turning jobs into legacies. We're going to tackle a big one. How do you educate the next generation of capitalists? Here's how we're going to break it down. We'll kick things off with the starting line to see where things stand. Then, we'll get into some really interesting cultural ideas about wealth and home. After that, a crucial lesson from a story about a guy named Tio Waldo. Then we'll map out a new path from survival to legacy. And finally, we'll reveal the secret ingredient that pulls it all together, something called sazón.
All right, first up, the starting line. Before we can even talk about building for the future, we have to get real about the present, about the economic reality on the ground right now. This quote from one of the sources, a guy named Tony, just cuts right to the chase. We Hispanics start with less. It's a simple sentence, but man, it says so much. And this isn't just about income. It's about the very foundation you build on. And here's what starting with less really looks like in hard numbers. The median net worth for a Hispanic household is just 19% of a white household's. A huge piece of that puzzle is the gap in inherited wealth, which for so many people is the launch pad that gets the next generation started.
But the numbers on a spreadsheet never tell the whole story, do they? There's another kind of wealth here, a really powerful one, relational capital. Think of it as this incredible web of family ties, of obligations, of shared identity. It's the kind of wealth that doesn't show up on a bank statement, but it's the engine that drives things like sending money back home to family, a lifeline that a typical net worth calculation just completely misses.
So how do you start closing that financial gap? Well, education is a massive part of the answer. Check this out. An incredible 88% of Hispanic students now finish high school. That's a huge leap from just 52% back in '96. This is a powerful, powerful wave of human capital that's creating a whole new path to prosperity.
Okay, so what happens when that growing wealth starts to meet culture? Well, the journey isn't just about stacking up money, it's about how you define success itself. And that brings up some fascinating and sometimes tense ideas about wealth, humility, and what home really means.
This quote really gets to the heart of a cultural dynamic. Wealth and humility don't live on the same block. In a lot of Hispanic families, there's this deep, deep value placed on being humble, on staying connected to your roots. And that can sometimes feel like it's in conflict with, the flashy side of financial success.
So this mindset really shapes what wealth even means. It becomes less about abstract stuff, like stock options or speculating on investments, and way more about tangible, stable, real-world assets. It's about owning a home, providing for your kids, building a solid foundation of stability. And that focus on homeownership, it's literally about to reshape the country. 70%, just let that number sink in. That's the projected share of all new homeowners in the entire U.S. over the next couple of decades. For most families, a home is the single biggest asset they pass on, which makes this trend a massive, massive engine for generational wealth.
So you've got this growing wave of assets, especially homes, being passed down. But that brings up a really critical question, right? Does the next generation even know what to do with it all? And that brings us to the lessons from a man called Tio Waldo and this urgent need for intentional financial education.
So one of the sources, Al, tells this great story about his uncle, Tio Waldo, who built this fantastic business. But Al noticed something really important. His uncle's success, his business smarts, it didn't just magically transfer to his kids. The story proves a vital point. Financial literacy isn't genetic. It's not something you inherit. It has to be taught.
And look, the Tio Waldo story isn't just a one-off anecdote. It points to a much bigger trend. Right now, only about a quarter of Hispanic adults have what you'd call high financial literacy. This right here, this is the gap we have to close to make sure that new wealth is protected and grown for the future.
But, and this is a huge but, there is a massive opportunity hiding in plain sight. An absolutely incredible 92% of U.S. Latinos are using fintech services. That is the highest adoption rate of any group in the country. The community is already mobile first, totally ready to use these digital financial tools.
So this leads to a really powerful conclusion.
The community is ready. The tools exist. The biggest barrier isn't access to the technology, it's awareness. The real game changer will be creating programs that connect people to these tools in a way that speaks their language, culturally.
Okay, so if you combine that cultural understanding with the right tools, what's next? You need a new roadmap. It's time to shift the whole mindset from just short-term survival to a whole new vision of building a long-term legacy.
One of the sources, Ray, lays out this journey just perfectly. For so many families, it starts with survival, just getting a job. The next step is creating opportunity, usually through education for the kids. But the journey can't end there. The roadmap has to keep going, to entrepreneurship, and then, ultimately, to making a lasting impact through legacy and giving back.
And that third step on the roadmap, entrepreneurship, it's not some far-off dream. It is exploding right now. An incredible 36% of all new businesses in the U.S. are being started by Latinos. That's almost double their share of the population. Entrepreneurship is becoming a core cultural value and an unbelievably powerful engine for creating wealth.
Okay, so we've looked at the data, the culture, the roadmap. Now let's bring it all home with the final secret ingredient, a concept called sazón that really defines the whole path forward.
As one of our sources says, you gotta look at this like you're making a recipe. And the ingredients on the table are just staggering. A population pushing 70 million people. A GDP that, if it were its own country, would be the 5th largest economy on the planet. And they're #1 in the US for both using fintech and starting new businesses. The potential is just undeniable. But of course, raw ingredients don't make a meal. You need the seasoning. You need the sazón. And in this context, the sazón is that unique cultural wisdom of the community. It's the lived experiences, the grit, the family stories. It's everything that transforms that cold, hard data into a living, breathing strategy for real prosperity.
So this all boils down to a pretty clear recipe for any leader paying attention. It means you gotta think in generations, not just financial quarters. It means investing big in people through education. It means using technology to close those awareness gaps and pouring gasoline on the fire of Hispanic entrepreneurship.
Look, the ingredients for an incredible economic transformation are all right there on the table. The data is clear, the trends are moving, the potential is absolutely immense. The future is going to be shaped by the people who don't just see this change coming, but who actively lead their people through it. So the only real question left is, how will you add the sazón?